process or research do you do before a film? So, for example, we were talking about Star Wars just before I press record. Like, do you look at orchestration techniques and what studying do you do, basically?
Yeah, I mean, normally on a film, what I will do is I start with a playlist. To tell you the truth, I kind of pick up and listen to things that I think might be interesting to me. I don't think other people will necessarily could put all of the bits together. They'd be like, okay, well, why have you got this strange sort of recording from 1970s of, two guys with flutes, and then you've also got Prokofiev, and then you've got a very strange bit of Prokofiev, and then you've got another bit of then you've got some Britney Spears, and it's like, so there may be a very, very obtuse bunch of sort of decisions in these things, but what they do is I'm listening into them and I'm hearing, okay, well, there's just a groove or a vibe from that, and there's just like, I love the tone of that type of orchestration there, and then there's just a tempo sometimes, or a kind of a darkness or a mood in the recording. It might not even be the music; it might be the recording style, and that will all be just me just thinking about what the film might need, and I'll put this playlist together. And that's basically how I start. Now I might listen to it as I'm going through, but even just the act of putting it together is sort of a decision-making process. And then from there, I'll often simultaneously just be playing around with tunes on the piano or on a single instrument. I will also spend a lot of time setting up a bunch of sounds as well for, make an auto load for those who use Logic. So pick sounds, kind of play around with them. I try and get them all sounding good, so I can grab a sound at any point and it's all sort of already prepared. It's got the right routing in it, and routing, I should say. I've been in America too long.
Yeah.
And it's got EQ in it, it's got reverb, and everything's kind of right. The best guess of the sort of things I want to play around with. Often a lot of that goes by the wayside because as you get into writing, you suddenly realize those sounds aren't useful, or you never use them. There's still, there's sounds in every film I've ever done that are sitting there from the beginning to the end, and I never touch them. I thought they'd be useful, but they weren't. I think you always start out with a rough idea of what the sound of everything, and as I say, that could be just an atmosphere from the recording, a style of recording, a reverb style, a miking style. That could be part of it, and then there's thematic ideas that you start to come across, and then there's orchestration ideas, and then there's sound ideas, and it all just kind of forms together.
How do you? I've got two thoughts then. First of all, I suppose, do you do harmonic analysis of? Do you really look at other reference material and really get into a harmonic analysis of it?
Yes and no. Again, part of the trick, I think, not again, because I think we were talking about this before we recorded. My belief is that I value my bad memory musically, my bad musical memory, which is that I remember things and I remember the feeling of them, but I don't remember enough specifics sometimes to be able to recreate them very well. So me sounding like me is often me trying to be somebody else, but missing.
It's very self-effacing.
Well, I wish I could. I listened to many things, and I thought these guys know exactly how to get John Williams down, exactly how to do that, exactly can do that. They can make that sound exactly. And I always think, well, how do they? And I try, and it kind of goes off. It starts good intentions, and it kind of veers off. But once it veers off, it starts sounding like something. As long as it sounds interesting to me, then I'll pursue it. Yeah. But the original idea was, okay, well, sound like John Williams, and it just doesn't. But it's also probably, for some reason or other, I will use something that John Williams would kill himself if he ever used, because he would hate it so much. And I'll use something that from the past I would like, some Esquivel trumpet thing, But at the same time, I'll be trying to be doing John Williams trumpets, but missing it, but doing it with another style that I like, and that all becomes a thing. And as long as I think it works,
Yeah.
I then sort of forget the idea of whether I'm supposed to sound like anybody else. Have to understand about composition is that there's composition and then there's arranging and then there's orchestration. Composition is an idea and how to piece that idea into, a timeline. Arranging is one of the most important things, and I think one of the best arranging teams, as it were, was like, for instance, the Police. If you want to look at great arranging, you can look at the guys who do the MGM musicals, or you could look at Ravel, but you can also look at the Police. 3 musicians doing 3 parts, and there's nothing is in the wrong place. Everything is doing the right thing. It's doing what it needs to do. It's doing it in the right place for the instrument. Everything is in absolutely the right place. It's perfect arranging. You could not come up with a better arrangement of those songs. If you're doing all the parts, the tricky thing is to make sure that you care about all the parts well enough. I mean, I think that's the thing to think about. Is that if I'm going to do an orchestration, you need to care about the woodwinds as if you're a woodwind player, and you have to care about the brasses if you're a brass player, and the strings as if you're a string player, because they're all fighting for room. And if you just stick them on and then you just lay something else over top of everybody else, and it just ruins their parts. I try and go back and go, God damn it! If I was the second clarinetist, I'd be really annoyed now.
But there's also, I suppose, I mean, this is a slightly different point, isn't it? But this tendency that people over orchestrate, or overwrite perhaps, or overdo things.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I saw that in another interview. And I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure I agree with you. I think there's just enough notes, maybe.
That's more to do with sort of the changing style of film scoring. That's all. I think I don't overwrite, based on any particular other type of situation. I mean, I overwrite for some filmmakers and some filmmaker styles. I think now, if you look at what I did on Bourne Identity at the time, people were thinking, this is weirdly kind of nothing going on, and now it seemed busy.
The first track on the first film, on the soundtrack, and it's the bassoon, and I went, no, and that I wouldn't first of all, I wouldn't have thought. I mean, at the time, would that work? I mean, who says it wouldn't work? But it was just an interesting choice of instruments where you've just got minimal drums and a bassoon.
But the process of how you get to these things, if people think that I sat around and sort of, waited for the muse to strike and then thought, aha, the genius has come upon me and I felt this. Just, no, what happens is that you're doing something, you're thinking that kind of works. And then I added high bass guitar part on it. And I did that tune on bass guitar. It's on the album. And I really liked that. It was a really unusual kind of sound. I was going through a weird processor and I was just playing it. And that tune was written on a bass guitar against this kind of very minimalistic background, which was based on a classical composer from Greece, from the early 70s, a woman composer. And then I'm doing this guitar on top of this. And so the track gets built up like that. And then we take it to the dub stage and the sound effects are just like wiped out the guitar. And so it just didn't work. So I thought, well, what can I do? I need something to cut through. And then I've always liked, since the Last Temptation of Christ, like everybody, I've liked the duduk,
Yeah.
But I'm not fucking using a duduk ever because unfortunately it's been done. So I thought, well, how can I do a duduk my own way? And I thought, I know what, the duduk, the sound of the beginning of Rite of Spring, high bassoon. Okay, so it's mournful, but it's also tense. It's got a tension to it. And then that'll cut through that sound effect. And lo and behold, that's what you ended up with. It's absolutely nothing. Every decision just rolls forward because of somewhat practical means,
Yeah.
the practical reasoning, and but also obviously always referencing my personal taste of things. So much as I absolutely love the to-do, I now can't use it.
This is not getting in. Sorry, I'm starting to get nerdy. I found this. Do you know, have you been to Brighton recently?
No, not for years, actually, no.
There's not a lot going on in Brighton at the moment, to be fair. But I got one of these. It's got about 3 working notes, but it's this reed. I can't even put it the right place. I can't play it, by the way.
What's it called?
I don't even know. It was in the window and I bought it.
Oh.
It's like a reed kind of flute.
Oh, right.
I don't.
So it's a resonant. It's what do they call it? It's not a transverse flute because there's no hole. There's a little membrane with it. Oh
yeah. Cool, isn't it?
That's great. See, that would be the kind of thing. So all you need to do is get a player to play that and say, "Can you play it like the Duke?" And then you get the emotion that people are after, but without the actual kind of just going straight to the cliche. To me, it meant everything. I mean, it was the formative part of my understanding of music. I think what I always say is that age 7, I pick up a violin, I play it, start to play it, but that was because I'd heard a piece, Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, that said a lot of things that I couldn't figure out how to say, and I hadn't heard anybody ever say with words. And suddenly I was understanding, kind of a much more profound way, in the language of music, the depth of feeling that could be expressed and could be related. And I've always said that music very rarely needs any translation. It just speaks to you and you understand it. It's a language all of us can understand. However, trying to speak it is fucking hard. And I've basically been trying to speak it for the rest of my life since I was 7. And I will die still trying to work out how to say what I want to say with music. The East Sussex county had a very wonderful bunch of people who ran the music in the county, and they found a way of starting up an orchestra, and right there and then they found this incredible conductor who was a really serious conductor, but also happened to be perfect as an educator for a bunch of kids. And he was not like a normal conductor of a youth orchestra. He was a professional conductor who just happened to know how to speak to us at the right level and never treated us like kids. What do I get Batty to do? I get him to do lots of things, everything from turn MIDI orchestrations into Sibelius orchestrations in classical works, like the piece you help with as well, to booking flights, to giving him a tune and letting him go in a scene, with that tune, see what he can do. But he's a mixture of an additional composer, who's literally just a composer who I can say to him, okay, well, let's take this theme, let's take this theme and let's do it just on brass for here, make it very dark for me, like that. And so he'll look at it and he'll try some stuff out. Or I could have done the same. I'm going to do a version of this tune here, and I'll just sketch it out on a rough piano sound, and he'll orchestrate it out in virtually in the gear, because we have to do everything pretty complete. I can't get away with leaving any gaps of the sound out at all. Every sort of orchestral texture and sort of color has to be in there for the directors to get a cue approved. So you then basically you hand it over to a big team of people who work truly as what they call orchestrators, but in a more technical way. They are taking things and making sure it's on the page correctly, making sure it's playable, putting in a lot of the work is dynamics, listening to the MIDI demo and putting in the dynamics, because they don't automatically come out of Logic. You know, you have to look and see all the controller information that's going up and down, and
yeah,
you know, and listen very carefully to the intensity of the sound, and also know enough about the orchestra to know, okay, well, it's the, you know, those woodwinds sound like they're MF to me, but I'm gonna have to make them MP because I've got, you know, a solo viola. So it's not going to work if we don't bring that down a little bit. And you know, to sort of interpret the intention of what the demo is, but the demos have to be very complete. So he's everything from, you know, kind of a sort of a true kind of administrative assistant to a musical composer. I am very indulgent sometimes in my time, and indulgent in my thought process, and lazy and obsessive. So sometimes he's a very good kind of foil to that, as somebody who can get stuff done. I mean, I've had assistants where I give them things to do and I'm really pretty sure it won't work, but just in case, I'll get them to do it. Now, what that is that might mean somebody goes away and works 12 hours a day for 3 days, and at the end of 3 days, I'll come in and I'll go, oh, yeah, no, that's never going to work. And that's kind of cruel. It is kind of cruel, but
it isolates it.
It isolates it from my. If I'd done it myself, I'd be like, oh God, I put 3 days into it. I'm just going to try and put it in there, you know. And you need that sort of separation to be able to go, no, it doesn't work. But what's important is that knowing that doesn't work, now I know what does work. You can have the temp go all the way to doing your job for you. I mean, literally 99% of the job can be done by the temp. And it's the right temp music editors and people knowing what they, you know, how to make it work, and the right pieces and stuff like that can be incredibly useful. And you can just rip it off and do exactly what the temp is, just change a few tunes. You can use that tempo, you can use that. Be careful about using the same key, but you can do that. And God knows, I'd say 70% of what is in movies today is certainly that. And it's obvious. It's utterly obvious. You can hear everything. And we've all been there, all done that. What happens if they're too close to the temp is you have to give them, I think you have to give them something that sticks to the movie more than the temp did. And the reason it sticks to the movie is then it perhaps has an extra layer that the temp didn't.
If they're really wedded to a temp, how do you prize them off it? I mean, you must have to like go, okay, do you want this one? Do you want this one or this one? Or do you hold your cards closer to your chest?
Well, what the problem is, I tend to build up around it. So if there's a problem cue with a temp, you need to build up the rest of the score to make sense. You know, I think that's how with the times I've got people off temps is, you know, it's just the longevity of like spending 10 weeks building every other cue and them liking that, and it building up to this one thing. And then you get to this one section that is not your music. And now you have a kind of a whole language for the film already built. And so when you do something that's different from the temp, as long as it's doing emotionally what the temp was doing, but now has this extra dynamic this extra level of being a whole, part of the whole, then you can change. I think you can change people's minds about certain cues and the temp there. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes I just had to give in and just like, okay, well, you need to buy the temp.
Yeah.
You know, and you can rip it off, but at a certain point, I think it's better to sometimes confront the filmmaker and say, that is doing a very specific thing that I cannot do for you because you are associating it with the other film that it came from. Yeah. And that's a lot of the time, that's what happens. It's not sometimes about the music itself. It's because otherwise a lot more classical music would get temped in. It's not. It's things where you know, they loved the way the music worked in a film, and they put it in their film, and they now 95% of their reaction to it is that it's bringing that association. It may also be working extremely well because it's the right speed, the right tempo, the right thing. But you can be malleable with all of those things and still give the scene the right music, but it will never be the music from another film with the associations of its success, of its, you know, of the way it worked, of the financial success of it as well. Those are just built into it, and you can sometimes you'll never get away from it. But I definitely have given into temps a few times, and I've given into telling them to buy the temp a few times, where you just know this piece is actually just too cool, and it does a different thing from what I can do. You know, yeah. I mean, one time I said, well, you'll have to. I can do it for you, but you're gonna have to get your lawyers to write a waiver for me, because I can't, under my contract, do what you're asking me. And then what producers get
was it
involved.
you?
And,
did you have that conversation? Was it your agent? Yeah. You had that conversation.
I did. I said, I can't do it because you've asked me to write original music. If I do this for you, I will be in breach of my contract with you. So what do you want to do? You know, and then so they either come back and go, okay, yeah, we'll let you out your contract on that one cue, and you know, but I've never got to that point.
That's I was going to say that hopefully that hasn't happened.
The agent that I've eventually got, who's been the right agent for me, has never really been what everyone thinks as an agent. The thing she did for me was like a coach. She was the best coach for me within the business. She taught me how to align my thinking with the way that everyone in the business works and how things normally occur. And when you have that knowledge, then you can make the decisions more carefully. You don't just spout your mouth off emotionally. You actually just then feel, okay, now I have the knowledge that this is the power struggle that is going on, and this is the difficulties that these people are under. This is the pressure that they're under. What is the solution that I can bring to the table and not be another problem for them? You know, and that gets you out of just reacting in a more, you know, a less emotionally mature way. And so that was what the agent was for me. It was somebody like who would coach me through the difficult bits. Calling her late at night and going, I just had a meeting. I have no idea what they want. They're crazy. Just get me off this movie. You know, so
right.
Every film. I know that she has other clients that do the same thing, and that's one of the things that she's great at. Let's talk about why they hired you in the first place. Let's talk about what you know you can do, and you know, so what if you minimize this and maximize that? You know, just real sort of the stuff that is sensible, and you know, and also somebody coming to you and going, okay, yeah, we could do that, but this will be the thing is now that person now will never hire you again, and they work with such and such, and they've just signed a new deal with, you know, a new production deal with that company. So that's going to get to Paramount now as well. And Paramount music department, you know, hasn't worked with you in 10 years. And so now their Paramount music department is going to say, yeah, hey, you work with John Powell. What do you think? And this producer is going to, and you suddenly realize there's tentacles of relationships here that are going to be damaged by you being a dick. What I'm finding now at my point in the career is that I'm doubting my techniques, my instincts, and that is difficult because that's what I really survived on. I think it's the mode where you are doing a lot of calculations in the back of your head that you couldn't possibly do consciously. That's where all the good stuff comes. And if that's not right, then I'm a bit lost. That's the dangerous sort of thought process that you can get to. And I you know, a joyful film where it can be wonderful and easy and everyone loves what you've done, and you get to the end of it and then you look at it and you go, this film doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is that the people who were being easy on me were easy on everyone. And that's why the film isn't as good as it could be. And the ones that are painful, sometimes you get through the end of them and you go, I'm glad they pushed me. I'm glad they asked me to do that again. I'm glad they weren't just going to take my first thing, as the right thing, because the details that they poured over with me were similar to the details they must have poured over at every level on the filmmaking, which is why it's much, much more successful. And sometimes, of course, you just have people who are both bad and obsessive and don't really help you at all. And there's some scores I've done despite the filmmakers, and there's some scores I could have only done because of the filmmakers.
You think they've actually shaped and molded your career as much as?
Oh, absolutely. The more I realize it makes every film now on harder to go into, because you've got to accept that, all right, I'm not going to be any good in this film unless I have the right collaboration with these directors and producers. I need them. I need them to get it, help me get it right, And but I have done things where, nobody had to sort of ask me much or tell me much. I understood it instinctively, and it came out right. And I've done that as well, where it comes out and it can't possibly help the film. The film is a loss, and in fact, I may have made it worse because my instinct was to try and do something to desperately kind of cover over things, or wave a bright something in the corner so you look there instead of where you should be looking, where there's a disaster going on in the story.
But that ability to analyze, self-doubt is the only hunger to get better, isn't it? Or just
yes, I hope so.
All the time.
Yes, and that's the thing, is it? And that, so I try and use that. I only used to use self-doubt to try and write better musically. It's only recently that I've been finding my self-doubt in the sort of the true matrix of what I'm doing for a film. Do I really understand filmmaking? Do I really understand how music works in a film? And when you look at other things and you think, I don't think that works, and they're hugely successful and everyone loves them, that's when the doubt really starts to hit. It's not about, there's lots of film composers that I think are great film composers, but I do not care for the music because it doesn't feel generated from the place that I look for music to speak from. It's generated from a place that gives exactly the right color background or the right tone background or has the right dramatic tension and things, but it's musically inert. But that doesn't even matter in those films. And sometimes actually it's helping because it doesn't have the stuff that it doesn't need. Yeah. And that's what's been depressing me a bit recently, which is I realize I'm trying to write things that are unnecessary in a film because I probably get in the way of things. I haven't come to a complete conclusion on this yet. And it is about sometimes who you're working for. But if you look at what is successful in film music and what is successful in films, I have not quite found a language recently that makes me believe I know exactly what I'm doing.
But surely that's what makes you improve. I mean, that's the fact that if you ever find the answer to that, then that's the moment that you stop doing it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, I probably need to I need to shift, by 90 degrees in some weird and wonderful way, I think, soon, to maybe everybody's going to be, this is a changing world we're in that's changing in a way that none of us could have foresawn. So is foresawn a word? I don't know if it is.
I don't know, but
foreseen.
Foresawn.
Yes. Foresawn sounds like something you'd do in a workshop with a.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a horror movie. I don't know.
it's getting to the end of the process and not liking what you've done, and not thinking you've done it well, and not thinking anyone will like it, and not thinking it's as good as you could do. That's difficult. I normally can make that into something that makes me push harder on the next one, and the next one, and the next one. But it gets exhausting, and then you have to question your sanity about that. When you look at things and you go, that is utter shit music. I don't know how anyone could write that, or why everyone likes that, and it just doesn't appeal to me, and I don't know how to do that. You've either got the choice of, I'm out here, or I have to figure out how to do something different then. Harry and I had a very interesting relationship musically, and I think, you know, because he's so good, it made me step up my game a lot. And that, I think that's what Hans knew. So he would I think we didn't realize this, but we were being kind of put together to, I think it really made us both, those films that we did together, because each time I'd go and listen to his stuff, I'd be like, shit, I need to get something good going here, because I don't want to be kind of like, I don't want to disappear in this, you know, I need to write better. I need to be better.
But your styles are so, I mean, I wouldn't say they're so different, but they're quite marked in their, I mean.
Sure, but the quality was really, I think, what we were registering in each other. You know, he was registering that I was doing things that were a bit weirder and wackier. And I was registering how effective he was writing, how well he was writing, and how it was just absolutely getting to the point very quickly and efficiently. And, you know, and I realized that I was just noodling. But at the same time, he would always come in and go, John, what are you doing with those trumpets there? You know, they sound like chipmunks, fucking woodpeckers, you know. And that's how he always described my trumpet writing. And then we would be on the scoring stage, and he'd hear the trumpet. That was the samples, and then he would come. He goes, "Oh God, I see now. Oh, that's fine. That's all right. That's all right." Because he'd hear the actual trumpet player, and of course they wouldn't sound as, you know.
That's a remote control, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a remote control, and we had a particular set of trumpet samples that Hans never used, because Hans never looked at a trumpet in his life. It's not really a thing he's ever thought about particularly, and so he used to hate me doing that as well. And I just loved trumpets as a percussion instrument. I mean, you know, and the samples just didn't do it. They never really showed it until you got it on the players, and then when the players got it, it was like everyone would go, "Oh, see, that's fine." And I was and it didn't sound that different to me from the samples to the players, but it sounded hugely different to everybody else, because I think I was filling in the gaps. He was like, well, these trumpets, they're sort of doing an impression of it, which is enough for me. I understand the rhythmic value, but the timbre is so wrong. The timbre is so wrong, and it's so mechanical. But then the real players would play it, and if I'd written it in the right place, and I'd written it, you know, and it was probably sometimes good keys and things. And I was going to be recording that piece, the East Sussex Youth Orchestra piece. I was going to record that this year. I'm still going to try. And I'm doing this. We're redoing this opera and then reorchestrating it and changing it and making it work better. I'm going to add strings and a few horns to it for an alternate version for larger, you know, sort of ensembles when we have that, but and a slightly larger chorus when we have that. But it's basically 4 soloists, and it's going to probably go from 65 to about 80 minutes, maybe, or 75 minutes.
John, thanks so much. It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you. I'll stop recording.